If you've ever felt a strange fascination with lost civilizations, if you've ever wondered how many historical truths have been blurred by the passage of time, or if you're simply curious about ancient traces that modern science still can't explain, then you're exactly where you need to be. In today's video, we'll dive into some of the world's most baffling unsolved mysteries. From ancient structures hidden deep within deserts, to strange symbols that have lain undisturbed for thousands of years beneath layers of time and silence. From objects that shouldn't exist, to evidence suggesting that the history we were taught may not be the full story. Get ready to awaken your imagination, and to raise the questions no one dares to ask out loud. Buckle up, because the journey into the world's unsolved mysteries is about to begin. And before we start, they say good fortune finds those who hit the like and subscribe buttons before the video ends. Part 1. The Red-Haired Giants of Lovelock Cave. In the arid desert plains of western Nevada, where sandstorms have whispered through time for millennia, the Paiute people once told a strange and unsettling legend. They spoke of a race known as the Ctcah, towering, red-haired giants who once dominated the land. These beings, they claimed, were not like any known tribe. They were enormous in stature, moved with wide, thunderous strides, and most disturbingly, were said to be cannibals. According to Paiute oral tradition, the surrounding tribes eventually united to end the threat. They drove the giants into a cave and set fire to its entrance, sealing their fate in smoke and flame. For generations, the tale endured, lacking written proof, yet never fading from memory. Then, in 1911, something unexpected surfaced. Two miners, David Pugh and James Hart, entered Lovelock Cave in search of bat guano, a valuable fertilizer. They weren't treasure hunters, just laborers expecting hard work. But what they found was astonishing. Inside the cave were thousands of unusual artifacts. Finely woven baskets, ancient bird traps, and most notably, sandals over 15 inches long, far too large for any normal human foot. A formal excavation followed in 1912, led by archaeologist L.L. Loud from the University of California. The results were staggering. Over 10,000 items were uncovered: tools, bones, even mummified remains with red hair. Early reports even mentioned skeletons over 7 feet tall. Suddenly, the legend of the red-haired giants, the Ctcah, was no longer just folklore. But something strange happened next. Many of the artifacts found in Lovelock were never publicly displayed. Some of the unusually tall skeletons reportedly vanished from official records. And the 1912 excavation itself? Poorly documented, an oddity for a find of such magnitude. Later researchers attempted to trace the missing evidence. But much had already disappeared, sold to private collectors, or simply lost. Even the human remains once displayed at the Humboldt Museum were quietly reburied, under the official reason of respecting indigenous traditions. And yet the questions refused to die. If the skeletons were nothing out of the ordinary, why did they vanish? Some modern scientists suggest the red hair could be a result of oxidation, a natural effect in dry, mineral-rich environments. As for the height, most bones were estimated at around 6 feet, 1.8 meters, tall, yes, but not giant. But even if that were true, what explains the massive handprint etched into stone? What about the evidence of fire damage at the cave's entrance, matching the Paiute's tale with eerie precision? One theory posits that these red-haired giants weren't giants in the mythical sense, but rather survivors of a forgotten pre-flood civilization, a people erased by catastrophe and memory. Some go further, linking them to the Nephilim, the hybrid offspring of humans and fallen angels described in the Book of Genesis. Could these beings be the remnants of that forbidden union? These claims remain far outside mainstream science. But one truth lingers. Something unusual happened inside Lovelock Cave. And most of what was once found there is now gone. So we are left to wonder. Why did a native tribe preserve such a consistent legend, long before any excavation took place. Why were so many key discoveries never shared, hidden, or lost to time? And if these red-haired giants really did exist, then what happened to them? Maybe they were destroyed. Or maybe, they were never human in the way we think. Part 2, The White Shaman Mural. On a sheer limestone cliff in the remote wilderness of West Texas, where the Pecos River meets the Rio Grande, there exists something few have ever seen, and even fewer dare to interpret. A mural. But not art in a conventional sense. Something older. Something more primal. Something that feels like an ancient story carved into the skin of the earth itself. It is known as the White Shaman. Tucked into a shallow rock shelter, not particularly tall or deep, and only a few meters above the ground, this mural stretches over 26 feet wide and 13 feet high, densely packed with human-like figures, animals, and symbols so abstract they defy translation. There are headless beings. Serpent forms coiled like strands of DNA. Feathered characters standing like ancient shamans. And as the sun rises and falls, the rock comes alive, its pigments igniting, then dimming into ghostly shapes that seem to move, to breathe. No one knows who created it. Nor why they chose this spot, accessible only by trekking across a scorching desert, hiking over 2 kilometers, and descending an 80-meter cliff. But this much is certain. It was not done randomly. In 1989, an artist named Carolyn Boyd, then known for painting murals, stumbled upon White Shaman during a field trip. She stood frozen for hours. When she returned home, she left her art career behind, enrolled in university, and began studying archaeology. For over 30 years, she devoted her life to a single mission: decoding this mural. In her 2016 book The White Shaman Mural, Boyd put forward a bold theory. That this was not simply a painting, but a primordial manuscript, encoded with sacred symbols, narrating the birth of the sun, the origin of time, and the border between the material world and the spirit realm. When a Huichol shaman first laid eyes on it, he wept. To him, the symbols matched almost perfectly the creation story his people had passed down orally for generations. Many of the mural's elements mirror the mythologies of Uto-Aztecan cultures. The serpents, markers of the threshold between worlds. The feathered figures, shamans traveling into spiritual dimensions. The sun motifs, dividing time and space, signaling cosmic rebirth. Some archaeologists remain cautious. They propose the mural could be hunting magic, or ceremonial imagery of a long-lost tribe. Others warn against projecting modern spirituality onto prehistoric art. And yet, no one can deny its complexity, intentionality, and symbolic depth. This was not created for beauty. It was engineered, constructed with a symbolic logic, a visual language we no longer speak. If the Bible was written in words, then the White Shaman mural may be its stone-carved counterpart, composed in symbols. There are no letters. No script. Only imagery, yet every line, every figure, feels like an invitation into a realm where life, death, and spirit are not divided, but layered together in one vision. Some of these symbols may date back over 4,000 years, making this one of the oldest visual records in all of North America. And still, the questions remain. Who painted it? Why choose such a remote, punishing location to preserve something no one could easily see or understand? And above all, why symbols instead of words? Could it be they didn't need language? Because what they left behind was never meant for the mind, but for intuition, for the soul. Perhaps we're trying to read something that was never meant to be read at all, only felt. Part 3, the 150,000-year-old Baigong pipes. In a barren, wind-scoured corner of China's Qinghai province, where the rugged Tibetan plateau meets an empty horizon, lies a place almost untouched by human presence. And in 1996, something was discovered there that defied all logic. While exploring the remote Baigong Mountains, a writer and journalist named Bayu stumbled upon a strange cave. At first glance, it was nothing extraordinary. Just rock, sand, silence. But inside, embedded in the cave walls and floor, were a series of ancient metal tubes, what would later be called the Baigong pipes. These were not natural formations. Some of the pipes pierced solid rock. Others extended outward from the cave, running in parallel lines down the slope, stretching toward Lake Tosan, a salty body of water nearly 80 meters away. What made this discovery so unsettling was not just the pipes themselves, but where they were found. There is no evidence of any known ancient civilization ever living in this desolate region. And yet, here were dozens, possibly hundreds, of metallic tubes, varying in diameter from just a few millimeters to over 40 centimeters. Some appeared to be cast directly into the rock. Or worse, the rock might have formed around them. Even stranger, many showed signs of corrosion, suggesting they once carried liquid. When news of the discovery broke in the early 2000s, it stirred major controversy in Chinese geological and archaeological circles. A research team from the Beijing Institute of Geology was dispatched to collect samples. Their findings: the pipes were made primarily of iron oxide, in other words, rusted metal. About 30% of the material consisted of silicon dioxide and calcium oxide, common in surrounding rock. But most baffling, 8% of the composition was made up of unknown substances not matching any known element or alloy. Using sediment and mineralization analysis, some experts estimated that parts of these pipes could date back 100,000 to 150,000 years. Let that sink in. If these pipes are real, they predate the known use of metal by humans by tens of thousands of years. So, the question emerges: who, or what, built a pipe system this far back in time? Skeptical geologists have proposed that the pipes could be fossilized tree roots, encased in iron-rich sediment over millennia. According to this theory, the roots were naturally plated and hardened into hollow, tube-like forms. But the counterarguments are striking. Tree roots don't grow in uniform, parallel paths. They don't bore through solid stone at precise angles. And they certainly don't arrange themselves in a pattern that leads directly to a saltwater lake, as if built to transport or filter minerals. Some of the pipe samples even emitted low levels of radiation, and displayed layered inner structures, hallmarks of industrial processing. Unorthodox researchers quickly connected the Baigong pipes to two prevailing fringe theories. One, that they were remnants of a forgotten pre-flood civilization, capable of metallurgy and liquid engineering long before recorded history. Two, or perhaps, they were alien infrastructure, a remnant of data-gathering outposts or energy relay stations left behind by non-human visitors. There's also the curious shape of a nearby mountain, eerily pyramid-like, and the suspicious alignment of the pipes toward the lake, suggesting deliberate intent, not geological coincidence. Conventional scientists offer a safer explanation, that iron-rich groundwater formed tubes through a bizarre, localized geological process, similar to petrified root formations found in Louisiana and Utah. But even they admit the precision of the pipe structures, their systematic alignment, and the total absence of any known human habitation in the region. All of it remains deeply unsettling. If these are natural fossilizations, then they may be the most perfect and inexplicable geological formation ever recorded. But if they were manufactured, then by whom? For what purpose? And why was it left behind? A pipeline system from 150,000 years ago. With no users. No operators. No historical record. Only silence. Only wind, salt, and a few rusting tubes, half buried in the dust of forgotten time. As if waiting for someone to finally notice what history was never supposed to remember. Part 4, The Moai Statues of Easter Island. In the heart of the vast Pacific Ocean, over 2,300 miles from the nearest continental shore, lies a solitary speck of land known as Rapa Nui, or more famously, Easter Island. Just 160 square kilometers in size, smaller than many modern towns. Yet it holds one of the greatest unsolved enigmas on Earth. Nearly 1,000 colossal stone statues, known as Moai. And the questions that echo louder with time. Who carved them? And how did a culture with no wheels, no metal tools, and no draft animals move stones weighing up to 86 tons across rough volcanic terrain? These are not ordinary statues. Each Moai was carved from volcanic tuff, most sourced from a dormant crater called Reino Raraku. They stand between 4 and 10 meters tall, with some reaching over 21 meters, the height of a 7-story building. Many wear atop their heads large red stone hats called pukeo, believed to represent ancestral topknots, or perhaps, something more sacred. But perhaps the strangest detail is this. Most Moai do not face the sea. They turn inward, toward the island, as if watching, guarding, remembering. The Rapa Nui civilization had no metal. No wheels. No oxen or horses. So how did they transport these monoliths across steep slopes and uneven paths? Conventional theory suggests logs and rope, rolled like primitive pulleys. But the islanders have always offered a different answer. The Moai walked. And they did it using mana. In Polynesian belief, mana is not magic. It's a spiritual force, linked to ancestry, nature, and sacred authority. According to Rapa Nui legend, tribal chiefs possessed mana strong enough to infuse the statues with life, allowing them to walk to their resting places. They didn't push. They didn't drag. They called the statues. And the statues came. It sounds like myth, until you see it. Modern experiments have shown that, with the right technique and rope positioning, a small group of people can walk Moai, rocking it side to side, step by step, just as the elders always described. A technique once doubted, now demonstrated. They call it the walking Moai method. And it eerily aligns with the oral traditions of the islanders. When Europeans arrived in 1722, Rapa Nui was already fading. Many Moai had toppled. Some still lay half-carved in the volcanic quarry. There is one statue over 20 meters tall, estimated at more than 200 tons, never moved, never raised. What stopped them? Some blame deforestation. Others point to resource collapse, or tribal wars that shattered the old ways. One theory suggests this. When faith in the chiefs collapsed, when the people no longer believed they possessed mana, they pulled the statues down, not out of hate, but out of spiritual rebellion. Moai fell, not by time, but by the loss of belief. Some scholars argue that the statues were ancestral vessels, effigies of the dead, infused with spirit, meant to watch over the living. Others claim they are remnants of forgotten knowledge, built by those who understood balance, gravity, and the hidden forces of Earth. A few researchers even compare the layout of Moai to telluric energy receivers, stone constructs aligned to underground currents of natural electricity, connecting energy points across the globe. If that's true, then Moai may not be statues at all. They may be energy devices. Placed with precision to anchor a grid we've forgotten how to read. And yet, mysteries remain. Why do some Moai stand buried, only their heads visible above the soil? Why do Moai sites align with areas of anomalous magnetic activity? And why do they never smile? They don't frown. They don't cry. They simply stand. Silent. As if waiting for something from us. Perhaps the Moai were never meant to speak. Perhaps they were built to witness. Part 5, The Bronze Statues of Sanxingdui. If you think you know ancient Chinese civilization, from the Xia, to the Shang, to the Zhou dynasties, Sanxingdui may be the place that unravels everything you thought was true. Because what was found here doesn't belong to any chapter of known Chinese history. No dragons. No phoenixes. No emperors, no inscriptions. Only wide, bulging eyes. Grotesque bronze faces taller than a man. And an entire culture, never once mentioned in a single historical record. It began in 1929. A farmer digging an irrigation ditch near Guanghan, Sichuan province, unearthed fragments of jade and bronze buried deep in the soil. But it wasn't until 1986, nearly 6 decades later, that the earth finally revealed what it had been hiding. 2 massive, sacrificial pits. Over 1,000 artifacts of bronze, gold, jade, and ivory. But none stunned the world more than the statues and masks, some towering 2 meters high, with bulging eyes that jut out nearly 16 centimeters. Ears hanging down to the shoulders. Beak-like noses. And hollow, alien expressions, utterly devoid of human warmth. They don't look Chinese. They don't resemble any recorded East Asian civilization. In fact, they don't even look human. The details that defy explanation. 1. Enormous protruding eyes. One statue's eyes bulge so far forward, it breaks the rules of human anatomy. Was this meant to be a portrait of someone, or something else? 2. A full-face golden mask weighing nearly 500 g. In the Shang and Zhou eras, around 1200 BCE, gold was scarce and extremely hard to work with. And yet, Sanxingdui displayed large, lavish gold masks, unseen in any other ancient Chinese culture. 3. A 4-meter-high bronze column twisting like DNA. Scholars call it a heavenly pillar. A symbolic bridge between sky and earth. But, connected to what? Or to whom? 4. No graves. No bones. No writing. We have their artifacts. But we found no trace of the people who made them. Dating places Sanxingdui's peak around 1200 to 1000 BCE. Parallel to the Shang dynasty in central China, a culture with traditional bronze ware, oracle bones, and ancestor worship. But Sanxingdui? No similar artistic style. No shared metallurgy. No dragons or phoenixes. And most shockingly, no writing, the very foundation of East Asian civilizations. Some researchers believe this was a completely separate cultural branch. Others suggest these were migrants, possibly from ancient Mesopotamia or the Indus Valley. Sanxingdui feels like an orphaned epoch. A civilization that blazed for a few hundred years. Then vanished without a trace. No signs of war. No fires. No mass burials. Just, gone. One theory points to an ancient earthquake that altered the river's course, cutting off the water supply and forcing evacuation. But is that enough to explain the total erasure of a people? Their bodies? Their language? Their stories? Or could it be that Sanxingdui never truly belonged to this land? And what we've uncovered are remnants of a visit, not a civilization. Look closely at their bronze faces. They make no effort to appear human. No anatomy. No emotion. No pretense. Perhaps they were sculpting themselves. Or perhaps they were recording the visitors, those who came before there was a shared language. Maybe Sanxingdui was a gate. And these bronze faces are how they remembered who passed through it. Part 6, the Piri Reis Map. In 1929, deep within the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, Turkish archaeologists were cataloging artifacts from the Ottoman Empire. Amid the scrolls, relics, and imperial records, they came across a strange piece of gazelle skin. But it wasn't just animal hide. On its surface was a map, hand-drawn, yet so shockingly accurate it would shake the foundation of historical cartography. Its creator? A 16th-century Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. But what made this map one of the greatest historical enigmas wasn't the name signed at the bottom. It was what the map showed. Dated 1513, the Piri Reis map was compiled from multiple older sources, some said to originate from ancient Greek, Roman, and even Alexandrian charts, as noted by Reis himself. But one detail stood out. The map clearly depicted the northern coastline of Antarctica. Not covered in ice. Yes, you heard that right. The coastline of Queen Maud Land, now buried beneath over 1.5 kilometers of ice, was drawn in such detail. It appeared as though someone had once seen it ice-free. The catch? Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until over 300 years later. And even then, it would take 20th century ice-penetrating radar to map the continent's subglacial landmass. So the question arises. How did Piri Reis know what humanity would only rediscover with radar centuries later? And if he didn't map it himself, who did? Skeptics have proposed he simply misrepresented a section of South America or an unknown southern island. But the counterpoints are difficult to dismiss. The map aligns precisely with modern GPS scans of Antarctica's true coastline. Even mountain ranges, straits, and currents are represented with eerie accuracy. In 1960, a team of cartographers from the United States Air Force analyzed the map. Their conclusion stunned researchers. The Piri Reis map depicts Antarctica before it was covered in ice, suggesting the source material dates back at least 6,000 years, to a time when the continent was still green. If that's true, then someone, long before recorded history, possessed advanced maritime technology, global navigation skills, and the ability to create highly precise geographic measurements, centuries before the invention of GPS. Could it be the remnant of a forgotten seafaring civilization? A survivor of what Plato once called Atlantis? Or was the original map not made by humans at all? Some have whispered the unthinkable. That ancient extraterrestrial visitors may have charted the planet, leaving fragments of their knowledge behind, for early civilizations to inherit. It sounds outrageous. But when a map drawn over 500 years ago contains details hidden beneath miles of ice, outrageous might be the mildest word we can use. Coincidence? Perhaps. But when the coastline shape matches, the proportions are accurate, and the latitude is near perfect, we are no longer speaking of luck, but of knowledge that was real, but left without a name. Perhaps Piri Reis had no idea the magnitude of what he held in his hands. But he was wise enough to preserve it. And because of that, we can still ask the question. If Antarctica was once green, what catastrophe erased that memory from human history? And who was the last to see it before it disappeared beneath eternal ice? Part 7, The Iron Book of Ethiopia. Some ancient books are preserved in museums. Some scriptures are locked away in the Vatican. But then, there are books so secret, only one person alive is allowed to look at them. In the rocky highlands of Ethiopia, in a sacred place called Aksum, a city believed by many to be the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant, stands a small, secluded church. It is guarded day and night by a single monk. A monk who can never leave. And inside is a book made of iron. Not decorated with iron. Not bound in metal. The entire book, cover to cover, page by page, is crafted from solid metal. No one knows who wrote it. No one knows what language it's written in. No one is allowed to remove it. And no one is permitted to ask too many questions. In Ethiopia's harsh mountain climate, parchment books disintegrate within centuries. And yet this iron book, also known as the Aksum Metal Codex, has survived for over 1,500 years, according to many scholars. The question is, how? How was such a book etched by hand in metal, bound in an ancient form, and preserved for millennia? And even more mysterious, why iron? One of the most corrosion-prone metals in existence. The answer, it's not ordinary iron. Analysis of small samples revealed a metal alloy unmatched by any known metallurgical process in sub-Saharan Africa at the time. Its composition doesn't align with any local ironworking tradition. It is completely anomalous. The script inside. It isn't Guizi, Ethiopia's oldest liturgical language. It's not Coptic, not Aramaic, not any Semitic alphabet. The symbols repeat with rhythm, as if grammatical, but match no known ancient character system. They don't even correspond to any entries in Unicode archaeological codices. We are possibly looking at a completely unknown language, or a deliberate cipher, created with one purpose. Only the chosen may read it. In Aksum, there is a law, unchanged for centuries. Only one man is allowed to enter the sanctuary where the book rests, the guardian. He cannot be replaced while alive. Not even kings or bishops may enter. Only when he dies is the next guardian chosen, typically a boy, selected in childhood, trained in solitude for a life of silent watching. No cameras. No scans. No copies. The book, according to locals, is a living thing, one that must not be awakened until its time has come. Ancient Ethiopian legend claims the book contains God's final word to humanity. But it cannot be read until the day of judgment begins to shake the earth. Some researchers believe it's a lost sacred text, perhaps passed down from the descendants of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Others suggest it might reveal the true location of the Ark of the Covenant, which vanished from history over 2,500 years ago. But there's another theory, one far more unsettling. That the Iron Book holds the genetic key to understanding a non-human origin of part of humanity. In today's digital world, everything is copied, scanned, decoded by algorithms. But not this. Because some secrets were never meant to be shared. They were meant to be kept. In the right place. With the right person. Until the right moment. Maybe the reason we can't decode the language isn't because it's too complex, but because we are not spiritually ready to understand. A book forged in iron, yet delicate as a curse. A place watched over by a man who may never leave. Maybe it's not just a book, but the final seal, left behind for those willing to ask. If every script leads us closer to truth, could there be one language that was created to keep the truth sealed away? Part 8, The 13 Crystal Skulls. In the early 20th century, deep within the ruins of a collapsed temple hidden in the jungles of Central America, a British archaeological team made a discovery that defied reason. A perfectly carved human skull, made entirely of clear quartz crystal. No seams. No tool marks. And most astonishing of all, it had been sculpted in reverse, from the bottom up. A technique so impossibly precise, it would require knowing the entire internal structure of the stone before the first cut. That was just the beginning. Over the decades, 12 more crystal skulls were discovered, scattered across the globe. From Mesoamerica to Tibet. From the deserts of Arizona to the ruins of ancient India. And from these finds emerged a chilling legend. When all 13 skulls are reunited, they will unlock a memory sealed away from humanity. The first mystery, what are they made of? Each skull is carved from natural quartz crystal, but at least 3 are made from single crystal silica, the same material used today in high-performance electronics and computer chips. Some feature intricately cut eyes capable of focusing light like lenses, resonant bases that amplify sound frequencies, and internal layers resembling natural microcircuitry, not unlike the structure of a hard drive. After more than a century of examination, no scientist has been able to explain who made them, with what tools, and for what purpose. The second mystery, they can't be recreated. In 1970, engineers at Hewlett-Packard analyzed one of the skulls and issued a stunning statement. If carved by hand, using ancient tools, it would take over 300 years of continuous polishing. A single millimeter of error would shatter the entire crystal. In other words, Either ancient artisans had access to ultrasonic cutting tools and nano-precision instruments, or they weren't human in the way we understand humanity. Across cultures, from the Maya to the Hopi, even the Zuni, oral legends speak of the talking skulls. They are said to contain the memories of a vanished civilization, communicate through visual transmissions in the mind, and activate only when placed at a planetary convergence point, what ancient maps called Earth's sacred nodes. It sounds like science fiction. But when a crystal skull can focus light, resonate sound, and reflect heat at precise frequencies, is it really so hard to imagine that it might be a form of ancient data storage? Today, we call it AI. We store, process, and reconstruct reality from data. But what if a civilization existed thousands of years ahead of us? One that endured global catastrophe, floods, fire, or even forced extinction. Then maybe the crystal skulls were never meant to be art. They were cold storage. Not stone tablets. Not scrolls. But vessels of memory, waiting for someone evolved enough to decode them. Every civilization leaves a legacy. We have Google Drive. The Romans had marble. The Egyptians had papyrus. But what if a forgotten race didn't want everyone to read what they left behind? What if they designed their legacy for a future generation? Awakened, disciplined, and reverent enough to truly understand? Then perhaps they would leave 13 skulls. Not to be admired, but to wait until the final skull is placed in the final spot. And the story tells itself. Part 9, The Stone Heads of the Olmec. Long before the rise of the Maya or the Aztecs, in the land we now call Mexico, there existed a civilization with no known name. We call them the Olmec. But that name is modern, assigned by historians. Because the Olmec themselves left behind no written record, no kings, no dates, no history carved in stone. What they did leave were the heads. At sites like La Venta, San Lorenzo, and Tres Zapotes, archaeologists uncovered 17 colossal stone heads, carved from volcanic basalt. Each standing between 1.5 and 3.4 meters tall, weighing over 20 tons, sculpted from single blocks of stone transported over 100 kilometers. Without wheels. Without metal tools. Without blueprints. And yet, it wasn't the engineering that shocked the world the most. It was the faces. Flat noses. Full lips. Deep-set eyes. Features that don't match those of known indigenous American populations, but instead, resemble the physiognomy of West African peoples. Mainstream archaeologists call this the Olmec artistic style. But others suggest something far more unsettling. One such voice was Ivan van Sertima, a Rutgers University professor, who proposed a radical idea. The Olmec may have been the descendants of African seafarers, who crossed the Atlantic long before Columbus and laid the foundations for the first civilization in the New World. The evidence? The unmistakable facial features carved into stone. Genetic anomalies found in ancient DNA samples. And most intriguingly, stone moving and construction techniques nearly identical to those used in ancient Egypt. Academia largely rejected the idea. But no one has yet explained how these heads were made. Or why they were made at all. If the Olmec were a purely local civilization, why did they leave no tombs? No written script. No surviving architecture. Nothing but these massive, silent faces. Unless they weren't from here at all. What if they were? Survivors of Atlantis, fleeing after a global cataclysm. Navigators of a forgotten maritime age, whose records were lost to time. Or even something else entirely. A non-human hybrid, described in Mesoamerican myth as the first people. Created not by nature, but by the gods. When you stare into the Olmec heads, you're not just looking at stone. You're staring at fossilized memory. Of something that wasn't meant to be spoken aloud. No one sculpts 20-ton faces just for decoration. No one immortalizes individuals in stone, unless they mattered. And no civilization leaves behind such monuments for over 3,000 years, unless the reason was sacred. Maybe, these weren't monuments to the past. Maybe they were messages for the future. Proof that we were not the first to build, to remember, to encode memory in stone. And perhaps, we're also not the first civilization to forget. Part 10, Human Footprints Beside Dinosaurs. We were taught one thing with absolute certainty. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Modern humans have only existed for about 300,000 years. Two timelines, separated by a chasm so vast, they were never meant to meet. They could not overlap. They could not collide. And yet, who, or what, left human-like footprints next to dinosaur tracks? In Glen Rose, Texas, along the banks of the Paluxy River, paleontologists have, since the 1930s, uncovered some of the most pristine dinosaur footprints ever found, preserved in sedimentary rock like fossils frozen in motion. But then, amateur explorers noticed something that would ignite one of the most disturbing controversies in modern science. Next to the dinosaur tracks, sometimes even overlapping them, were what appeared to be human footprints. Not animal prints. Not water erosion. But barefoot impressions, with 5 toes, natural arch, and a shape that resembles the modern human foot. Some were over 16 inches long, implying a being over 8 feet tall had once walked alongside the dinosaurs. And from that moment, a war over time began. Skeptics, mostly professional paleontologists, argued that the human tracks were simply erosion artifacts. Or that dinosaur prints had eroded into vaguely humanoid shapes. But if that's true, why do so many of these tracks show consistent shape, evenly spaced strides, and, in some cases, clearly defined heels and toes? And why, within years of their discovery, were many tracks removed, chiseled out, or quietly suppressed? Paluxy isn't alone. In Burroughs Cave, Illinois, similar footprints have been found near unidentified fossil remains. In Pengcheng Mountain, China, a 2015 discovery revealed a human-like footprint next to what appears to be a prehistoric claw mark. In South Africa, a footprint embedded in volcanic rock suggests a humanoid figure standing over 10 feet tall, dated, if accurate, to millions of years ago. What's unsettling isn't a single anomaly. It's the global pattern. The way these impossible tracks seem to echo each other, across continents, across time. If these footprints are real, and they are truly preserved in Cretaceous-era rock, then the implications shatter our historical timeline. There are only 3 possibilities. 1. Modern humans coexisted with dinosaurs, but the truth was edited out of history. 2. Civilizations have risen and fallen more than once, and we are not the first iteration. 3. Time is not linear, but fractured, manipulated, or deliberately altered. Everything leaves a footprint. A civilization leaves behind its tools. An animal leaves behind its bones. But footprints? Footprints mean presence. You can't fake being there, if you never were. Maybe we've been wrong about the order of history. Maybe we've been wrong about the dates. But the most terrifying possibility is this. We may be living inside a version of history that's already been rewritten. And everything they never taught us in school is exactly what we were never meant to remember. We've just walked through 10 mysteries. 10 hairline fractures in the seemingly unbreakable wall of history. From footprints carved into the wrong layer of time, to crystal skulls that behave like fossilized hard drives. From stone heads that don't match the people who lived nearby, to underground rivers of mercury no one dares to excavate. Not a single one of these clues is taught in any classroom. Not one artifact is displayed proudly in a national museum. And not a single question is encouraged by the official narrative. Why? Because these pieces don't fit the script that history has already chosen to tell. Maybe the most terrifying thing isn't that we don't know. Maybe it's that we once did. And someone decided we shouldn't remember. Maybe these aren't mysteries at all. Maybe they are the deliberately removed pieces, taken out so the puzzle could look complete. We don't end this journey with an answer. We end it with an invitation. To doubt. To dig. To step into the territory that official history wants you to avoid. If you've come this far with us, you're no longer just a viewer. You're a seeker. Someone who refuses to believe something simply because it's been said, again and again. Continue the search. Because the next video will take you further. Deeper. Into questions that no one has yet dared to ask out loud. And if you're still here, maybe it means you're ready to see what no one else has ever dared to see. We'll see you in the next chapter of Veil of Mystery.